Hello, I'm Hernan, and welcome to the 3D Color Factory Lesson 5, Multicolor 3D Printing using support blockers in Cura and printing an Ender 3 from Creality. For this lesson, we'll be making this Captain America nameplate. The first thing I did for this project was an internet search looking for ideas on how to design the Captain America shield. I found quite a few different designs. I finally settled on this design. This proportion looks okay, but the dimensions are for a full-size shield. To make it work in the nameplate, I've substituted inches for millimeters and then multiplied by 3. So the blue circle went from 8 inches to 24 millimeters, the 14 became 42, and so on. To complete the nameplate, I added the text Captain America, but I couldn't find the exact font using the movie poster. So I settled for the font Handle Gothic BT, which has a similar look. Here is the design of the nameplate, including the shield in Corel. Here is the model of the nameplate in Fusion. Looking at the model, we see that it has a lot more sections to be printed individually than any of the nameplate that we printed in the previous lessons. This will require us to be more organized if we want to have a nice print. Looking at the cross-section of the model, we see that it has 9 components, 8 if the text is one color. But to get an extra visual effect on the text, their bottom will be red and the top white. We also see that at the center of the shield, we will be printing 6 colors on top of each other, plus a 2-color text and a frame. All this means that we will be generating 9 G-codes, one for each section. I know we can try to combine some sections to try to print them in a single G-code, but for this project, let's keep them separate to get a better quality print. To generate all those 9 G-codes, we'll have to create a few blockers or erasers. Think of this blocking and eraser method like doing a custom paint job in a car. You cannot paint all the colors at once. Before you can paint each color, someone has to cover and block all the parts of the card that you don't want to paint in that color. Then you can paint, and repeat the same process for all the other colors. We're following the same cover and paint process. Well, in our case, is erase and block and print. One way to organize your print is to plan the sequence of the prints to reduce the number of filament changes. I chose this sequence, but there are a few others that also work. First, we print the back plate with the light blue. The second print is the red circle of the shield. The third is the red bottom of the section of the text. Fourth is the white circle of the shield. Fifth is the white top part of the text. Sixth is the second red circle of the shield. Seventh is the blue circle of the shield. Eighth is the white start. And finally, ninth is the white frame. In total, 6 color changes. These are the dimensions of each section and the absolute height, which will be super helpful when we work on the blockers or erasers. If you look at the heights of the circles of the shield, you see they are 0.6 millimeters tall. Since each layer is 0.2 millimeters high, each color will have only 3 layers, which is basically the minimum you can use if you want to have a good solid color. As you can see by now, this is way too much information to remember, and we haven't talked about the famous interference to promote adhesion we have been talking about. So this is where getting a notebook comes in handy to plan your print. Your notes do not have to be pretty, they just have to be useful enough for you to remember how to do the print. Here are some of pages of my notes when I'm working on a design. As you can see, my drawings are very simple, sometimes they are not even drawings at all. But a list of colors and heights, write whatever helps you with your print. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with the project. Let's open Cura and load the model. Like in previous lessons, first we create the eraser for the back plate. Select the support blocker. Let's make it an eraser and make it 83 millimeters by 200 millimeters by 3 millimeters height, and move it to X0, Y0, Z2. This is how it will look from the cross-section view. Let's create this G-code and rename it one light blue backplate. We got 1 down and we have 8 more to go. Let's go back to Cura and select the eraser and change the dimension Z to 2 and move it to Z0 to block the backplate like this. Let's run the slicer to make sure it is blocking only the backplate. Now move the model to Z minus 0.2 to create the interference to promote adhesion. This lowering of the model affects the absolute height of all the components on the nameplate. So we're going from these values to these values. Now we want to create the eraser for the text. Select the eraser and multiply by 1. Let's change its dimension to x100, y75, z2 and move it to x0, y0, z1.8. To make the final adjustment, let's move it with the mouse to cover only the text. Run the slicer to make sure it covers the text. Great! This is our cross section showing the erasers we have made so far. Now we need to make the eraser for the shield. So let's make a copy of the eraser for the text by multiplying it by 1. Select this new eraser and move it to cover the shield. We see that this eraser is too wide, so let's make it a square by changing the x to 75 and the z to 3. Let's move to z to 1.8 to cover the shield, and let's run the slicer to confirm that it is only erasing the shield without affecting the frame. This is how the cross section looks like with the shield eraser, and now we want to add the frame eraser. Let's bring in the frame model, move it to x0, y0, z 1.8, and let's make it an eraser. I'm sorry if I sound like I'm repeating the same steps over and over, but these steps are necessary to control what we want to print each time. Let's run the slicer, and if everything is correct, we should get 0 minutes. That means nothing will print. This is how it looks in the cross section. Everything is blocked or erased. We are now ready to create G-codes 2 to 9. Let's start with the text. We want to uncover the bottom section like this. Select the text eraser and move it to Z 2.8 and run the slicer. Everything looks good, so let's save the G-code and rename it 3 red text. Remember, we're following the print order we planned before. Now we want to create the G-code for the top part of the text. For that, we need to change the height of the eraser to 1 mm and move it to Z 1.8. So let's select the eraser to change its height to 1 mm and move it to Z 1.8. Let's run the slicer. Everything looks good. Save the G-code and rename it 5 white text. Let's put the eraser back to its original place. That is height Z 2 mm and move it to Z 1.8 mm. Now we're going to move the eraser for the frame to Z5. Select the frame eraser and move it to Z5. Run the slicer. Everything looks okay. Save the G-code and rename it 9 white frame. Let's put the eraser back to its place. Select the frame eraser and move it to Z 1.8. Now it is time to work on the shield. First we want to move the shield eraser up to show the big red circle of the shield. Select the shield eraser and move it to Z 2.4 mm. Run the slicer. Everything looks good. Save the G-code and rename it to red shield. Now we want to expose the white circle of the shield. Select the shield eraser and move it to Z 3.0. Select the eraser for the back plate. Resize its height to Z 2.4 and move it to Z 0. Just a quick note. We could have resized it to 2.6 mm and move it to Z minus 0.2, but since we already have the cross section showing the heights with interference, it makes it easier to use them for Z0. Let's run the slicer. Everything looks good. Save the G-code and rename it for white shield. Now we want to work on the small red circle. Select the shield eraser, move it to Z 3.6, select the backplate eraser, resize it to Z 3.0 and move it to Z0. Run the slicer. Everything looks good. Save the G-code and rename it 6 red circle. Patience please. We're almost done creating G-codes. Now it is time for the blue circle. Select the shield eraser and move it to Z 4.2. Select the backplate eraser, resize it to Z 3.6 and move it to Z0. Run the slicer. Everything looks good. Save the G-code and rename it 7 blue circle. We're finally at the star. Select the shield eraser, move it to Z 4.8. Select the backplate eraser, resize it to Z 4.2 and move it to Z0. Run the slicer. Let's do close-up of the star to see the pattern of the print. As you can see, it looks like any print, which is fine. But I want to show you the pattern that I like to use for stars that I think can give this print a little extra effect. Let's go to print settings and change wall line count to 10 and run the slicer. Now the star has this concentric effect. Save the G-code, rename the G-code 8 white star. Before we edit the G-codes, let's change the wall line count back to 3, so we don't get surprised next time we use Cura. Oof, we finally finished creating the G-codes. Now it's time to edit the G-codes to avoid crashes and to keep the bed hot between prints. For G-codes 1 through 8, we add the semicolon to the M14 instructions to keep the bed hot. For G-codes 2 through 9, we add the crash avoidance instructions. I'm going to make Z6 just to make it easy on my head, and in case later I decide to print the frame first. We're getting better and faster at editing these G-codes. Since this is repeating the same edits, I speeded this up. Just a quick note, all this editing of G-codes took me 5 minutes. A little patience, please. We're almost done with the edits. And we're done editing G-codes. Now is printing time. We start with G-code 1 light blue backplate. We change the filament to red and continue with G-code 2 red shield. For the bottom part of the text, we print G-code 3 red text. We change filament to white and print G-code 4 white shield. Using the same white filament, we print G-code 5 white text. Let's change the filament back to red and print G-code 6 red circle. Change the color to blue and print G-code 7 blue circle. Our last filament change is to white and print G-code 8 white star. And the final print is G-code 9 white frame. And the print is complete. I really like the way this nameplate came out. I like the shape of the shield showing the curvature. And I really like the red bottom on the white text. It makes the text look like it is floating. I especially like the way the star pattern came out. What do you think about this print? Let me know in the comments. Like in previous videos, I included a link to Thingiverse where you can download the models we used today. I've been including the model for the backplate without any designs if you want to add your own design. Also the backplate with the shield without any text if you want to add your own. And the shield by itself just in case you want to use it in one of your projects. Well, that is all we have for today. I hope you can join me for the next lesson. Until then, thank you for watching and have a great day.